Convicted killer Cameron Wilson has been sentenced to 4 life sentences.
Throughout sentencing, Wilson seemed...
When suspects hear of receiving a long prison sentence, they often abandon hope of ever seeing the outside world again in their lifetime. But what happens when, after decades, they finally get released? Here are 10 serial Kate Bellers who defied the odds and outlived the longest prison sentences. Paul Geidel Jr. Paul Geidel Jr. was born on April 21, 1894, in Hartford, Connecticut. He became famous for serving the longest prison sentence in the United States that ended with parole. His sentence lasted 68 years and 296 days. He was convicted of second-degree murder when he was just 17 years old. On July 26, 1911, Geidel committed the crime that led to his long imprisonment. He was working as a bellhop at the Iroquois Hotel in New York City when he robbed and murdered a 73-year-old broker named William H. Jackson. Geidel suffocated Jackson with a chloroform-soaked rag and stole a few dollars. He was arrested 2 days later and convicted of second-degree murder. His sentence was 20 years to life. Geidel started his prison sentence at Sing Sing Prison. Due to good behavior, his sentence was shortened, but in 1926, doctors declared him legally insane. He was transferred to the Dannemora State Hospital for the criminally insane, where he stayed until 1972. After that, he was moved to Fishkill Correctional Facility, where he lived in a unit for elderly inmates. In August 1974, Geidel was granted parole, but he chose to stay in prison. He had spent his entire adult life there and felt he could not adjust to life outside. He finally left prison on May 7, 1980, at the age of 86. Charles Foussard, Charles Lucas, Edmund Kindle City Foussard was born around 1882 in Noumea, New Caledonia, which was part of the French colonial empire. He worked on ships as a young man but deserted his ship, the St. Elizabeth, in 1899 while it was docked in Sydney. He then lived as a vagrant, wandering around New South Wales, Melbourne, and Adelaide. He supported himself through occasional labor and petty theft. On June 28, 1903, Foussard murdered an elderly man named William Thomas Ford. He shot Ford 5 times with a pea rifle at Ford's house in Skye, then stole Ford's boots. Foussard walked back to the Dandenong Ranges. Despite being a skilled bushman, he was caught by police and Aboriginal trackers. Foussard was committed to J Ward, a prison for the criminally insane in Ararat, Victoria. He remained there for the rest of his life. When he died in 1974, at the age of 91 or 92, he had spent over 71 years in custody, making him the longest-serving prisoner in the world. Francis Clifford Smith. Francis Clifford Smith was born on October 9, 1924 in the United States. He holds the record for being the longest-serving prisoner in the world. Smith has been in prison for over 71 years, starting his sentence in 1950. He was found guilty of murder when he was 23 years old. In 1950, Smith was arrested for the murder of a security guard during a robbery. The crime took place at night. He was sentenced to life in prison for his actions. Despite his advanced age, Smith remains in prison. As of now, Francis Clifford Smith is 94 years old. He has spent more than 7 decades behind bars and is still serving his sentence. Joseph Ligon. Joseph Ligon was born on May 3, 1938, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He became the longest-serving prisoner in America, convicted as a minor. At the age of 15, Ligon was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder by association. This led to a life imprisonment sentence without the possibility of parole. Ligon was imprisoned from age 15 until he was 82. In the early 1970s, Ligon was offered clemency along with his accomplices by the governor. However, he rejected it because it meant he would have to be on parole for the rest of his life. His attorney, Bradley Bridge, who represented him for 15 years, argued that Ligon was guilty by association. Bridge believed that if Ligon were tried today, he would likely be convicted of manslaughter and receive a much shorter sentence. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that life sentences for juveniles without parole were unconstitutional. In 2016, they made this ruling retroactive. Ligon was resentenced to 35 years in 2017, making him eligible for parole due to the time he had already served. Believing his sentence was unconstitutional, Ligon argued against the parole. The federal court agreed, and he was released on February 11, 2021. John Phillips. John Phillips, born in 1934, has been in prison since 1952. At 18, he was arrested for sexual assault. Phillips, with an IQ indicating intellectual disability, was classified as a moron by a mental hospital. Pleading guilty, he was sentenced to life. Over 66 years later, Phillips is North Carolina's longest-serving inmate. Nicknamed Peanut, he's now 85. Phillips has adapted to prison life, with no major infractions for decades. Despite losing contact with his family, his sisters occasionally visit. Parole has been repeatedly denied, partly due to his intellectual disability. Phillips remains resigned to his fate, accepting prison as home. William Heirens. William George Heirens, born on November 15, 1928, became known as the Lipstick Killer after his arrest in 1946. Heirens was charged with 3 murders, which he confessed to under torture. He was convicted in 1946 and remained in prison until his death in 2012, making him Illinois' longest-serving inmate at the time. Heirens was arrested on June 26, 1946 for attempted burglary at the age of 17. During his interrogation, he endured 6 days of continuous questioning without sleep, food, or access to his parents and lawyer. Heirens claimed he drifted into unconsciousness and was given sodium pentothal without consent. Under the influence of the drug, he reportedly mentioned an alternate personality named George, which authorities claimed was responsible for the murders. Heirens later recanted his confession, saying it was coerced through police brutality and torture. Despite his long imprisonment, Heirens maintained his innocence and stated that his confession was false. He spent the last years of his life at the Dixon Correctional Center in Illinois. Heirens' case attracted considerable media attention and inspired a novel called The Bloody Spur, which was adapted into the 1956 film While the City Sleeps. In his later years, Heirens suffered from diabetes and other health complications. On March 5, 2012, he died at the age of 83 at the University of Illinois Medical Center. His case was also featured in a 2018 episode of the series A Crime to Remember. Richard Honeck. Richard Honeck was born on January 5, 1879, and became known for serving one of the longest prison sentences in American history. In November 1899, Honeck was jailed for the murder of a former school friend. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and served a total of 64 years and 1 month, amounting to 23,418 days, before being paroled on December 20, 1963. Initially, Honeck was imprisoned at Joliet Prison. In 1912, he stabbed the assistant warden with a handcrafted knife, resulting in 20 days in solitary confinement and 6 months shackled with a ball and chain. After this incident, he was transferred to Southern Illinois Penitentiary, where he worked in the prison bakery for 35 years and maintained a clean record. Throughout his long imprisonment, Honeck received only 1 letter, a brief note from his brother in 1904, and had just 2 visitors, a friend in 1904 and a newspaper reporter in 1963. His case did not attract public attention until August 1963, when media coverage highlighted the extraordinary length of his incarceration. Honeck's release came through the intervention of his niece, Clara Orth. After his release, he moved to Sutherland, Oregon, with Orth. In 1971, he was admitted to a nursing home in Roseburg, Oregon, where he spent the final years of his life. Richard Honeck passed away on December 28, 1976, at the age of 97. William Richard Wallace. William Richard Wallace, born in August 1881 in Young, New South Wales, Australia, gained notoriety as a convicted murderer who spent most of his life at the J Ward facility for the criminally insane in Ararat, Victoria. In 1926, Wallace was arrested for fatally shooting William Ernest Williams at a cafe in Melbourne. The altercation reportedly stemmed from Williams smoking inside the cafe, angering Wallace. Despite witnesses to their argument, no one saw the shooting, and Wallace refused extensive questioning. Declared insane by 2 doctors, he was confined to J Ward indefinitely. Wallace lived a structured life at J Ward, often dressed in a suit and spending his time playing chess and smoking. Despite occasional violent outbursts, he found some contentment within the facility. Celebrations of his 100th birthday in 1981 sparked a petition for his release, which was granted, yet Wallace staunchly refused to leave, stating, "Don't be acting silly, I live here." Vasquez v. Hillary. In Vasquez v. Hillary, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a defendant's conviction must be overturned if members of their own race were systematically excluded from the grand jury that convicted them. The case centered on Booker T. Hillary. an African-American man accused of murdering a white girl in California in 1962. Hillary argued that his rights under the 14th Amendment were violated due to racial discrimination in the grand jury selection process. Despite his initial conviction being overturned in 1986, Hillary was retried and convicted again later that year. He remained incarcerated until his death on January 16, 2023. Howard Unruh. Howard Barton Unruh, born on January 21, 1921, gained infamy for his brutal shooting spree on September 6, 1949, in Camden, New Jersey, where he killed 13 people in just 12 minutes, making it the deadliest mass shooting in New Jersey's history at that time. Armed with a Luger P-08 pistol, Unruh's rampage also left 3 others injured. Despite facing charges of 13 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of assault and battery, he was ultimately found not guilty by reason of insanity. Born in East Camden, Unruh had served in the U.S. Army during World War II, receiving several medals for his service. Following his arrest, he detailed his actions to police, admitting to the killings and revealing he harbored paranoid schizophrenia. This diagnosis led to his commitment to the New Jersey Hospital for the Insane, where he spent the remaining 60 years of his life until his death at age 88. And that's all we have for today's episode. But if you see something even more shocking than that, then be sure to check out the video on your right.